welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Sagittarius for the month of August 2024. I hope you are well. Should add it's for Sun, Moon or Ascendant. I've had a little bit of time off to move house, so I'm forgetting my intro altogether. So bear with me. What to tell you, there will be an extended at the end of this. You can access via the links in the description box below. There's a link to Vimeo. There's also a link to Circle if you would like to come and join the private community. It's all there. Knock yourself out. Let's get straight in and see what's going on with you. Can I have 3 cards for Sagittarius, please? There we go. Recent past is the 8 of Wands. That's a Sagittarian card right there. What about current energy, please, for Sagittarius? We have the 3 of Cups, sideways. And what's coming towards Sagittarius, please? Whoa, okay. We have a number of cards, and the astute amongst you will have noticed that we have the Tower in there. We have the Tower, the 8 of Cups, and the 5 of Cups reversed, which looks to me like a very positive sign altogether. We'll get to why that is in a second. At the bottom of the deck, we have the 7 of Swords. This card's been busy today. It came out for Libra in their reading too. The 7 of Swords ultimately is usually associated with deception of some sort. Now, this can be by way of your people that you spend time with, or it can be talking about a level of self-deception that we all practice at all times. It's a thing, basically our work is unravelling the ways that we deceive ourselves in search of, truth, I would say, universal truth. But it looks like something is popping here. What is this? And that's the word that I would use. Queen of Wands is sat beneath that, Aries. Very interesting. Let's get some clarifiers on the table, Sagittarius, and then we'll pull this apart. Tell me about 8 of Wands. Why is that here? We have the Magician. That's Gemini or Virgo. So it's a Mercury card, which is interesting because the Mercury within it, I think that's Mercury in Sagittarius actually. What do we have? High Priestess and the 3 of Swords together. Tell me about the 3 of Cups, please, in the current environment. Current energy. There we go, that one. Temperance, there you are. And we have the Tower in reverse. Interesting. I'll straighten all of these up in a second. Tell me about the Tower, the 8 of Cups and the 5 of Cups. We have Page of Cups in reverse. 8 of Cups again, and in the centre, the Page of Pentacles. Interesting. Ace of Cups now is the card at the bottom of the deck here. So we've got a new start of some sort, because we always have a new start when there's aces involved. But we also have pages involved, which also augur new starts. The thing is, it's of a different kind of quality, I would say, to what you might have been expecting. And the way that these cards have come out here make me feel like there's been something that you've been wrestling with for a while, Sagittarius. And the reason that you've been wrestling with it is there's been an assumption that there's a particular way that this needs to play out. Now, and I'm not saying it's with other people, although we do have other people as potential catalysts for things that are going on here for you. But it's more the sense of there was a way that you thought you had to deal with things. And what's coming here is a revelation that you've almost been pushing down the wrong track with yourself for a while. And that's why the release has been elusive. Let's put it that way, elusive. Because this Page of Cups is in reverse, 5 of Cups is in reverse, 3 of Cups is on its side here. It seems like you've been, like I said, you've been pushing yourself to deal with something in a particular way, and that's not the way to deal with it. It's something else altogether. And in that moment, just to skip to the end, in that moment, it seems that the completion that's been so elusive for you, or the change, or the shift that you've been looking to bring about for yourself, comes in absolutely holistically without it needing to be forced, which is very interesting indeed. Now, I have just given you my impressions of the overview of this. You are Sagittarians, right? You like the overview. But we're going to dig into the detail of it a little bit, because there is the outside possibility that what we have here is a situation, and I'm just going to tell you about it because it's here and I see it. We have a situation where there have been people in your environment, so-called friends, so-called people within your, social dynamic, who have not had your back in the way that you thought that they should. And there's something about that that's coming to light. But this feels much deeper than that. It feels like it's a personal revelation, and it's a personal push that you've been trying to force yourself into, possibly forgiveness and understanding and compassion and all that sort of stuff, when actually what I've got here is a very clear feeling of boundaries needed to be asserted, which will obviously have a knock-on effect for how you deal with other people. But this feels like it's sort of historic, to be honest, because we don't leave behind emotions if we're still in the middle of a fray, in the middle of the fray, rather, of a situation. So we start with your recent past, and we've got that Sagittarius card there, the Eight of Wands that I was talking about. And we have, to clarify it, the Magician, the High Priestess, and the Three of Swords. Now this, again, I think is talking to an old pain, an old wound. It's something that has been possibly quite deeply seated within you for a very long time. So deep, in fact, that there is the possibility that you haven't really been able to gauge the extent, the depth, or even the edges of what this is. But the fact that the Magician and the High Priestess are here, which for me are, I guess I would call them the power couple of the tarot, right? They're coming together as the heavenly parents of the Fool, right? When these two get together, there is an energetic and spiritual union that brings around the energy of pure potential, which then require the Emperor and the Empress to birth into the material world. So there's always the implication, whenever you see those two couples together, there's always the implication that the Fool is somewhere near. In this case, not quite yet ready to erupt into the material realm, but certainly starting the work of creating the right environment for the Fool to come around, right? And the Eight of Wands is either situations picking up a pace, things beginning to achieve a level of momentum of their own, right? So we are running inexorably towards a situation, a conclusion, an inception, something like that, where it feels a little bit like events are overtaking you, and there's something that's been put in motion here that will lead inexorably to this over here, and certainly some of that too, and they're talking to each other in this point. Or it can speak to swift incoming communication. Like I said, this is a Mercury card, so we're talking about news, we're talking about the way that the brain works, we're talking about communication, and we're talking about it coming in very rapidly. Now, this Three of Swords here, and I'm actually going to pick up my other deck. The Three of Swords seems to be a point of realization that you have achieved, that there's something within you, deep within you, and possibly within the spiritual you, that has been kind of chuntering along under its own steam for a while, under the level of the conscious awareness, that has been dictating the way that you do things. And in its revelation, as it does feel like there's a revelation of sorts here with that Eight of Wands, there's something to be perceived that would have eluded you before, because you quite simply did not have the right energetic environment to be able to understand it. Now, if it's situations beginning to speed up, if it's an amplification of energy, and as I'm recording this, like, we're heading into the Mars-Uranus conjunction, which is, you know, there's some feisty energy right there. Also, as I'm recording this, actually slap bang in the Venus Pluto conjunction, not conjunction, square. So there's some tension around power dynamics and relationships and all that sort of stuff. And yes, it will be a prompt, you know, it will be a way of making you uncomfortable so that you make changes, but it's not changes to your relationship as an abstract concept sitting away from you. It's the way that you show up in these relationships, or the way that you show up in a particular situation, you know. All of it speaking to a level of tension that has been building, a bit of a pressure cooker, because it's pushing you towards something really strong. Tell me about this Three of Swords, please. Right, we've got another three. We've got the Three of Pentacles in reverse, as we have the Three of Cups on its side here. It's like there's a breakdown of something that could feel like it's things starting to fall apart, but it's actually things coming together. The Eight of Wands is at the bottom of the deck again. So the universe is really doubling down on the message here, and we do have the sun that is sitting beyond it. Now, the sun is often described as the best disinfectant, right, for something that's festering and mouldering beneath the level of our conscious awareness. Once we can see something, we can clean it out. We can see the extent of whatever, right, the extent of the infection, the extent of the wound, if you will. And it seems to be around foundations that have been created that no longer serve. Where we move after the three is the four. And fours are foundational cards. So we've got to run up to a four here. This is an old cycle that is being undone, unpicked. It could feel a little bit like it is unraveling somewhat, but it's showing a deeper truth. It's been presenting a deeper truth to you around the idea of what it is that pains you, what it is that hurts you, and how you have possibly deceived yourself about that for the longest time. Now, when we move into your current energy, we've got that Three of Cups on its side, and I would not be surprised to find that a lot of Sagittarians have become very selective about who they choose to spend time around. Now, you could say that's because everybody's stupid and they just don't get it, and, you know, whatever, can't be asked with these kind of people. But I think that there's something much deeper and much more profound going on with you here, Sagittarius, because you yourself are in a state of change. It's not that the people around you are changing or not changing or whatever. It is that you are becoming someone different, and the foundations that you previously laid and the people that populated those circumstances are now not suitable for where you are going and what you are becoming. But I think I want to say for the most part, most of you are at this point relatively oblivious to the changes that are occurring within you, and are putting it down to something circumstantial, putting it down to something environmental, right? Whether it's the people or whether it's the circumstances that you find yourself in. And because it's quite abstract in some sense, like what you're experiencing, you can't really nail down the particulars of it, other than you're outgrowing people, or people just seem to be stuck. People don't seem to see things the way that you see them. They don't understand things the way that you see them. This is an expression of your healing. Now, we could take that as an overarching theme and say, right, okay, well, you're healing, and it makes perfect sense that people would be being shed from your social circle. I mean, if you're anything like me, you're probably wondering who's left to go, because the social circle doesn't really exist anymore. But there's a feeling of making space here. And it's making space within yourself. Those foundations previously laid don't work anymore. Emotional responses, previously entrained, don't make sense anymore. I mean, the environment feels very different around you, and it would be easy to attribute that as being the reason why things feel so strange and so different. But actually what's happening is you are changing, Sagittarius. Let me pull out this deck again here, because the Tower in reverse is an interesting it's an interesting card. Reversals can mean the opposite of them, the meaning that they have in the upright, or they can speak to delays, or they can speak to obstructions of sorts to the energy flowing properly, and it's more towards the latter that I'm leaning here, but it's slightly different with you. It's like there's a pressure build-up. I've already used the word, the phrase pressure cooker here, and I think that it's on point for what I'm feeling. It's like tension is building, and even the sunniest, most optimistic of Sagittarians are actually finding that there's something grinding. Even if things on the face of it seem to be going very well, there is something grinding here that is difficult to pinpoint. Now, like I said, it would be very easy to just put this down to a change of environment. Some of you might have moved recently, but I don't feel like that's what this is. That was the Ace of Cups that flipped there. Right, we've got the Emperor on its... How fascinating. I'll tell you why it's fascinating. It's because the Emperor and the Two of Swords, in exactly that order, showed up together for Libra. And I did a lot of talking to Libra about the fact that the South Node obviously is in their sign, but is only in their sign for another 4 months, right? At the end of the year, it's going to shift into the Virgo-Pisces axis. And so we can expect an escalation of tension around themes for them, and it seems also for you, Sagittarius, of what is yours to control. There's a... Oh, I'm going to fuck up, misattribute who this is to. It's either Cam White or it's Gordon White, no relation, totally not family members at all. One's an astrologer, the other one's a magician. One of them said, "What's mine to do?" He said that he thinks about that phrase a lot, like, what's mine to do? And I think that's where you're at. The environment is important because you feel unsettled. Not uncomfortable, but unsettled where you are. Because you have transplanted you from where was to where am now. And this is true, excuse me, whether or not you've moved house, but it's particularly true if you have relocated in the last few months. And that's fine. Except that the new environment, right? You could have changed jobs, you could have changed house, you might even be in a new relationship or something like that, right? It's requiring a different version of Sagittarius to show up than the one that got you here. And it's that transitional, liminal energy where you don't quite know what is yours to control, what is yours to do, what it is yours to be autonomous about. Because I think there's been a little bit too much, just going to throw this out there, a little bit too much of a reliance on us doing something. There's I said before that wherever we see these couples, the only one we're missing now is the Empress. We have this implied birth of the Fool, or at least a notice that the Fool is on its way. The Fool for you is your new route forwards. It's your new path forwards as a different Sagittarius. But because you have not completed the process of this particular turn of the wheel, it feels a little bit like you're in limbo. You're living a new life, but as an old Sagittarius. Like I said, there's a lot to thank old you for, because it's got you to where you are. But the path that leads forwards from this point is a very different one to the one that you've been on. And like I said, if you've been retreating into the comfort of us, which is not a criticism of relationships, but maybe a something that's acting a little bit like a plaster or a band-aid on the wound of, I'm not quite sure how to create now moving forwards. I mean, another way of looking at this is that it's quite possible that some of you Sagittarians have been working towards a goal for so long, and you finally arrived there, you finally got it, you're finding yourself a little bit listless because the purpose, the goal, the thing that you were working towards now has been completed. It's been achieved. You've done what you set out to do, but it was so big that it's now left a little bit of a hole in your psyche because you're like, well, okay, I'm here, now what? So now what we have is, what's mine to do from this new perspective? What's, you know, this Five of Cups and this Page of Cups, I absolutely maintain, as I said right at the beginning, that it was a way that you've been trying to push yourself to show up, right, emotionally. And but I'm going to deviate from that ever so slightly and say it's not because you've been pushing yourself to forgive someone or whatever. It's because you are now trying to work out who you are and what you're about and what your purpose is, without necessarily quite having all of the information yet. And so perhaps you've been pushing into doing things the way that you always have done them, emotionally, what feels right to you. But that emotional response on that whatnot belongs to a different Sag, different you. Right? This Two of Swords is really important because she's showing the blind spot. She's showing you what you do not see. There's a desire to control, and that is not in and of itself a bad thing at all, right? Because there are things that are ours to control. There are things that are ours to do. There are things that are ours to be in charge of. But you seem a bit stuck. You seem a bit listless, and you seem a little unsure. The Tower in reverse is that energy building, the tension building, before we get to this point here where August shoves you into your role. Now I say it like that because the Tower is sudden, shocking, Plutonian energy. It requires a transformation of sorts, but it takes you from a path that you're on and directs you to a different one. For you to go from the Tower reverse to the Tower in the upright is showing you where you slough off what was old and what's not necessary for you moving forward, and you accept the new role that the universe is showing you, right? The new path that it's showcasing, going, here you go, Sag, this is where you're going now. The skills, the drive, the stamina, everything that it's taken for you to get to where you are now are skills that you have, but they need to be utilized differently now, and you need to connect with them differently now, because this Eight of Cups, double Eight of Cups here, and we have double Eight of Wands here, right? These are cards that deal with power and where your power is sitting, right? Numerologically, it's 8, and 8 is all about power. How you exercise it, how you use it, how to recognize abuses of it, how to notice when we abuse ourselves, because that happens a lot, and particularly if you're prone to self-sabotage, which, as an archetype, or as a sign, seems to be baked in there somewhere with you, Sagittarius. There's an underlying fear that's being exposed here, and the root of it is slightly different for each of you. But this process of transformation and rebirth wasn't just in the process of getting you to where you are now. Like, it was a fundamental block in the process of a bigger transformation. And like I said, I do feel like August is going to shove you into the direction that you should be going, rather than sort of cantering around and being like, well, is this my thing? Am I in charge of this thing? Or either, and there being almost an intellectual processing of what this is. And it's interesting how we go from the 3 down to the 2, and then the implication will be from there we go to the Ace of Swords, right? That's the epiphany moment. That's when we understand what the fuck is going on, and what our part is in it, more specifically, what we bring to the table and what we are now to do moving forwards. It's almost like you've made this a little bit too cerebral. There needs to be less thought and more do. But there's something that's being kind of making you hesitant. And it's not environmental. It's not practical. It's not material. It's none of these things. It's emotional. For those of you who've moved, or those of you who've undertaken some sort of big change in your life, you know, and you're now here, there's a very clear reevaluation that needs to happen of who and what you are now in this space versus who and what you were in the space leading up to getting to this space. I hope that this is not too abstract, and I'm sure you follow me because you're Sagittarians, right? You get that bigger picture thing. But it's this Ace of Cups that's really fascinating. Like cups, 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 cups. There's emotional shit everywhere. The only cards that are in the upright of the cup suit in this mishmash that is August are the 8s, about reclaiming your power, right? Leaving behind a certain emotional attachment or an emotional entrainment of a particular way of doing things and showing up and being who you are and whatnot. And choosing to put this down because now the universe requires something different from you, and it's important that you are secure enough in your sense of self and secure enough in your love for yourself to be prepared to take the next step in something, or maybe it's even the first step in something. Tell me about this Page of Pentacles. Interesting. We've got the Queen of Cups, which is Cancer energy, and then we have the Lovers, which has fallen on the floor. Let me pick that up. Right. Card at the bottom of the deck is the Devil. Whether you realise it or not, you've been a little bit more hesitant to strike forward than usual. Now you've arrived at this place, you're a little bit like, oh, okay, well, I'll just vibe here for a little bit until I work shit out, until I find out what's going on. But what that's doing is holding you still, and you are not supposed to be held still. Now, to be fair, Saturn's in retrograde, Pluto's in retrograde. By the time you watch this, Mercury will probably be in retrograde. What else? Mars is going retrograde, I think, in August sometime. You'll have to forgive me with the move and everything. I am totally out of the loop with astrology and what's going on, so I can't really feed any of that in. Not accurately, at least, anyway. But the juxtaposition of these two cards, which are the same card but so totally fucking different, is really important, right? I've talked about this a lot, and I'm not going to go into great depth about it now because I'm already 29 minutes into this video, right? But I have talked about it at length in the past, and I probably will again in future. Like, these are the same card. They both speak to an energy stream, but there's a question of whether you, by way of fear, you anchor yourself to what you're afraid of, or the escapist tendencies that allow you to pull away from what you're afraid of, whilst simultaneously keeping you stuck to it. And the exercise of free will, openness, vulnerability, but also conscious co-creation with the universe, Now, the Queen of Cups is asking you to examine your emotions and see why it is that these 4 cards here are showing up. You know, this 5 of Cups is a card of loss. It's a card of grief quite often, of bereavement, of stuckness, of hurtness, of woundedness. And it feels old to me. It feels like there's a pattern of emotional programming that's coming up to the surface that was unexpected. And your hesitancy, your stasis, and you're probably covering it with lots of things, is a way of avoiding this very painful aspect of your emotions that seems to be being agitated right now. Now, this is all pushing you towards love, but it's doing it by way of saying, like, you have to face your fears. You have to allow yourself to be open. I say, if you've been relying on the us just a little bit, right, the us of a partnership, whether that's, you know, you and your significant other, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever, right, husband, wife, or whether it's, you know, you and your parents, or you and your kids, or you and your friends, whatever. I mean, it took a lot to get you where you are, Sagittarius, but that wasn't the end of the fucking story. That was just the beginning of the story. And it's almost time to dig in harder, whilst also giving yourself permission to get out there and do, because the Fool is getting ready to come in. But this means that you have to start thinking bigger than you have done. It's quite possibly the formulation of a new goal for yourself. And I'm not talking about, you know, what you're going to achieve by the end of 2024. I'm talking about, you know, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Where do you want to be in 10 years' time? What is it that you want to create for yourself? I don't think there's a crisis of self-belief here, but there is a sense of being ever so slightly lost. But it's not so lost that you end up having to sit down and just cry by the side of the road or anything like that. Not that I think Sagittarius would do that. It's more a kind of nagging feeling. I don't really know what I'm about now. I don't really know what the point of me is. I don't know what my goal is. That's not the issue. The issue is the rumbling emotional stuff that's going on underneath. Like, if I don't have a use, if I don't have a purpose, am I actually useful? Will people still want me around? Do I dare to put myself out there individually, personally? What am I afraid of? This is really interesting, Sagittarius. I think you are an interesting sign anyway. So I'm going to go over, thigh-slappingly interesting, I'm going to go over to the extended now and dig into this a little bit deeper, because I could actually sit here for another hour and just riff off the top of these cards that are here, but actually I want to dig into this properly in the extended. So if you would like to join me, you can do that on Vimeo, or you can do it on Circle, my private community. It's entirely up to you. If neither of those feel particularly like they're your cup of tea, that is also fine. But in terms of the way that the energy is showing up, it's like, it makes me feel like you should expect this edgy feeling that you've got to intensify until you work out what it is that it's trying to tell you, because the universe will make you uncomfortable so that you move, right? And you've done that. You've shifted yourself somehow, some way. You've all done that. But it's not the end of the story. now there's a whole new shift, and you have to experience who you are while you're doing it, which means you have to give yourself permission to get out there and do those things. Yeah, this is really interesting. So know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.